Hey guys, I just wanted to talk about Halo Infinite today in kind of a casual setting, just kind of touch on some of the things I want to see from this game. As the hype starts to kind of build around it, we've started seeing some videos of people talking about what they want to see from Halo Infinite. I thought I'd give some of my thoughts on the direction I want the franchise to go, especially since it's not necessarily the direction that I see a lot of people talking about. So I'm just gonna kind of go through five things that I want to see. These aren't necessarily the only things, and I've tried to pick broad ideas, not necessarily super specific things like I want playable elites back or something like that. As I just want to kind of get across my general focus and the direction as opposed to nitty gritty specifics. So I'm just going to go through top five, and hopefully you guys can leave some of the things you want to see down below. These are kind of in an order of least important to most important to me. With that being said, I didn't think too long and hard about it. So to start off, I want to talk a little bit about the Master Chief and really his adventure and this idea of franchises ending and stories ending. And I want to, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I do have a larger commentary planned for some point where I want to talk about, franchises in Hollywood and the gaming industry's inability to let them go. But I think it's just important to remember that while Halo Infinite might not be the last game in Chief's adventure, we should be kind of realizing that Halo's not going to last forever, and nor should it. Every game, movie, or story has its time in the spotlight. And I think too often these franchises limp past the point where they're really welcome. I mean, look at Halo, 3 bangers back to back to back where it revolutionized gaming. And those 3 games have become icons of the FPS genre. And ODST and Reach had mixed receptions, and then Halo 4 and 5 had more negative receptions. And you just have to keep asking yourself, when is it time to hang it up? When is it time to realize that, yeah, it was a great ride, but all good things come to an end? And it doesn't really come to an end. Just in terms of the title, I think Halo Infinite is such a great title to end it on if that's the decision they want to go. The Halo ring, infinitely circling. And that's a Halo. I mean, I will play the Halo games from now until I die. I mean, I no plans of ever not playing Halo. It's an amazing series, and I think that's something that people forget a lot of the times. You want Star Wars to die. No, I just want them to not pump out a movie every couple years. I want a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and I think that's just such a lost art in today's industries, where everything has to be a universe and a multiverse with, 25 films, in the Marvel universe so far. It's ridiculous. Well, I understand if Halo Infinite, isn't going to be it for Halo, and let's face it, it's not. I mean, as long as they're profitable for Microsoft and, a big brand for Microsoft, they're going to continue to pump it out. But this is just a larger issue within gaming and movies as a whole. I mean, BioShock's a great example. I hear all the time people saying, oh, where's BioShock 4? I want BioShock 4. And I always, wonder why. What's wrong with BioShock 1, 2, and 3? What's wrong with, a great trilogy? If BioShock 4 came out today, would it have that same impact that the original had? And that's the thing. Every game franchise you look at, and for the most part, they kind of just falter at some point. I mean, even BioShock, the first one was one of the greatest games of all time. And then you have BioShock 2 and Infinite, and say what you will, but I'm pretty mixed on those games, and I think a lot of people are too. And most people agree that BioShock 1 is the height of the franchise. Call of Duty is another great example, a game that, at one point was a good game. I mean, COD 2, COD 4, World at War, MW2, BO1. There were some great games in the COD series, and it's just become a walking meme now. Quite literally. Did you guys see that new trailer? It's awful. Even if Halo Infinite isn't the end, I think they need to start looking inwards as storytellers here and start saying, how is Chief's adventure going to end? How is his journey going to complete? What are we trying to say with it? And just kind of try to narrow down where they're going with this narrative, especially after Halo 5. There's just no direction right now. Speaking of Halo 5, I think one of the more important things for Halo Infinite is it has to have a more unified experience across the board. Well, in Halo 5, the player base was mainly split between 2 modes of play, Warzone and Arena. Now, obviously, this created a lot of problems, as there really wasn't enough content to go around, especially at launch. Warzone players were regulated to just 3 maps, while Arena players had a lot of missing modes or, light amounts of maps things that we had come to expect from the franchise that just weren't there. Things such as Big Team Battle, things such as Theater and Forge. Main staples of the franchise just weren't there. And I think a lot of this was because instead of trying to create a unified multiplayer, they were really building two different multiplayers for two completely different groups of fans. On one hand, you had Warzone, which was an ultra casual, everyone, 12v12, big modes, AI, tied to microtransactions where everyone could call in tons of power weapons, or Arena, which was a super sweaty, grinded out, competitive arena, and there really wasn't that middle ground that Halo had been known for. Halo had always been a tough game, a game that has a pretty decent skill gap, a game with a learning curve that new players aren't necessarily going to come in and dominate the way they can in something like Call of Duty. However, it had also been always a somewhat casual experience. It had never been so daunting to get in where you were going to, get no kills for multiple matches in a row. It wasn't like that, and there were less casual modes and more casual modes. For example, a team hardcore playlist would obviously not be great for a newcomer, but something like Big Team Battle or an Action Sack or Griff Ball or even Infection, modes that anybody can kind of hop in and have fun. And a lot of these were missing in the beginning of Halo 5. If there wasn't even a social playlist, it was either you're playing ranked or you're playing Warzone, a completely different bad game mode. Okay, I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there. I just have a lot of problems with Warzone, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I just think Halo needs to focus on building a game for everybody, right? Halo 3 wasn't broken into the big team battle players, the customs players, and the, hardcore 4v4 players. No, it was a game for everyone, a game where everyone played a bunch of different things. I played big team, I played, 4v4, I played Jenga and Smear the Queer and all those fun modes. There is just a lot of fun for everybody, and it all felt like they were building together. Sure, there were maps that you would not play 8v8 on, and there were maps that you would not play 4v4 on. They just didn't work both ways. But all maps were forgeable. All maps kind of were still being built for this overall Halo experience, as opposed to two totally separate games. If you talk to anyone in the Halo community, almost nobody plays an equal amount of Arena and Warzone. I mean, there are people that play both. I mean, I've played both. But I think the majority of people kind of have their preferred one. Like for me, I almost always play Arena. It's, normally I specifically say, I'm going to hop on some Warzone today because I haven't played in a while and I just want to kind of kick back. But for the most part, my time in Halo 5 has been spent in the Arena because I think this is much better executed mode of play. I mean, I'm not a huge Halo 5 Arena fan. I still think it has a lot of problems. I see the word great thrown around in regard to it, and I'm not even sure if I'd call it good per se, but it's certainly decent and has enough redeeming qualities where I do enjoy it as a mode, unlike Warzone where it's normally just not my cup of tea. But it's flipped for a lot of other people. A lot of people really like Warzone and don't understand or definitely don't venture much into the Arena, and this is not really the way you want to build your game. Sure, in games like Call of Duty, there are people that only play TDM or only play DOM or SND or something, or Battlefield. There are people that only play Conquest, and then there are people that try to play the whole suite of game modes. But at the end of the day, it's still one unified experience. They're sharing maps, they're sharing guns, and other sandbox elements. And that's really not how it is in Halo right now with Warzone and Arena. They're just such other ends of the spectrum, trying to appeal to two different audiences. And that's just not the way to build a game. Infinite has to find the middle ground and really focus on building one experience, one multiplayer, where everybody can enjoy as best as they can. I just think Halo Infinite needs to kind of find that middle ground between super sweaty and super casual and focus on building a game for everyone where everything can share the same amount of content and create one unified experience. Alright, number 4 might trigger some people, so please hear me out on this one just for a bit. Don't throw Halo 5 out. And I know what you're thinking. Don't click that X, please. I hate Halo 5 as much as the next guy, especially from a campaign perspective. Halo 5's campaign was an abortion of an excuse of a campaign. It failed in almost every regard and is definitely one of the least favorite campaigns for FPS campaigns or really any genre that I've played. I've only played it twice, which is pretty low for a Halo campaign for me, as I normally will play them as much as I can. Even Halo 4 I've played a bunch of times. Halo 5 really just had very little going for it. It failed from narrative, it failed in gameplay, it had so many issues. With that being said, I think Infinite has to make Halo 5 better, not forget it exists. And it's a tough task, and I'm not entirely sure how they do that, but I think they need to legitimize Halo 5 and some of the direction it took and some of the things it set up that never really explored, instead of just forgetting it exists. I get the sense, at least with the little trailer we saw, that we're definitely going back to our roots, which is good, and I will touch on that a lot later. But I still think Halo Infinite is the 6th chapter in Master Chief's saga. It is the 8th Halo game, and it is the 6th chapter, and it can't forget that. It can't just jump from 4, 5, which has been exploring themes about Chief being human, about the psychological impact of being raised like that as a, genetically modified human, kind of, and with everything it sets up, with the Guardians, with Cortana, it can't kind of just forget that and try to forget Blue Team and Osiris and all that, as much as I would like it to, in a way, as much as I'd like to almost retcon Halo 5 and go back and do it right. Because Halo 4's story really set up Halo 5 to be very successful. I mean, I know a lot of people were mixed on Halo 4's story and its overall direction, but you can't deny the fact that Halo 4, whether you like the direction it took, it's a pretty good story and it executed what it wanted to do particularly well. However, Halo 5 kind of took that and bombshelled it. Now we're in a position where Halo 6 has to simultaneously kind of go its own direction, but also continue the saga, continue, from Halo 5's story. And I'm kind of just afraid that they're gonna, like the fans have been requesting, to go back to its roots, just kind of be like, yeah, Blue Team left and Osiris is off doing something and you're Master Chief and you're lost on this ring world, and we'll go back to the Prometheans and Guardians later. You know what I mean? And as much as I would almost like that in a way, I don't think that's the correct way to go about it. The thing I'm trying to avoid here is something like The Force Awakens for Star Wars. Whether or not you like the movie, it's hard to deny the fact that it probably played it too safe and didn't feel like a natural transition from 6 to 7. It felt almost forced, like fan service. And I'm afraid of that happening to Halo 6, where it just doesn't feel like an important piece of the overarching story, where it feels more like, hey, go back to our roots, and just almost a retread of Combat Evolved. And I think I'm a little worried about that too. Chief stumbling upon a mysterious ring world where he unleashes the Flood by accident, and it would be really a shame to just have to retread that story instead of going in new directions. Some might consider this hypocritical, seeing as the Halo fans have been wanting to go back to their roots, and I agree. I think we should go back to our roots, and I'm getting to that later, like I said. But you have to stick to Halo 5's story in a way and continue a natural progression from there. Try to detach yourself a little, go in some different directions, but try to continue some of the themes and some of the plot points set up with that game in Halo 6, and avoid being too much of a retread of Combat Evolved or any of the past games. Still try new things. Still don't get complacent and think, oh, we want to go back to our roots. Okay, well, we'll copy and paste the original trilogy, because I have the original trilogy. I have Combat Evolved, and I played it 1,000,000 times. I want Halo Infinite to be its own game, to stand on its own 2 feet. So I think Halo Infinite has to be Halo 6. It has to continue the story set up in Halo 5. It's too late to turn back now. They need to continue this and kind of see it through to the end. With that being said, I think it has to avoid being too much like the original trilogy or any other of the Halo games, and stand on its own 2 feet and still feel like natural progression within the Halo franchise, at least from a narrative standpoint. Another thing I'm worried about in regards to like going back to the original trilogy, if you watch the trailer, everyone's loving the music. Oh, it's so good. It's straight out of Halo 3, right? And I love the original trilogy's music. I love Marty. He's probably my favorite composer or musician of all time. I mean, he is. No hesitation there, basically. And I enjoyed Halo 4's soundtrack, and I think Halo 5 on its own is pretty good music. I just think it had a lot of issues in regards to execution and enhancing the experience. Halo 5 really did not enhance the experience, whereas Halo 4 both enhanced the experience and was great music, even if it wasn't really Halo-esque, which I don't have as much of a problem with as some people. But I still think that, you know, people are way overreacting to this Halo Infinite music trailer, where it's like, it's straight out of Halo 3, and I'm fine if that's just the music, and, you know, don't get me wrong, when I heard those piano notes, it's like, yes, you know, this is Halo. With that being said, while Marty used the same kind of pieces of music as the trilogy went along, he also added new music, and his renditions of past music was different. I mean, you listen to the Halo theme from Halo 1, and Halo 2, and Halo 3, and it's very different instruments, different vibe, and I really hope that they don't go so complacent and try to go back to their roots too much, where they're just copying and pasting Halo 3's soundtrack, for example. It has to be its own music. It has to stand on its own feet. It has to feel like Halo Infinite, and it has to feel like a natural piece in the Halo franchise. So next up, I want to talk a little bit about the microtransactions, Warzone, and the weapon sandbox as a whole. And I think this was an area where Halo 5 really dropped the ball. Obviously, the microtransaction system was not good, and I do worry it's going to be back in Halo Infinite, with Frank O'Connor saying, as far as these things go, it wasn't that bad, or it was more liked. And this is why we have to be critical of things and not, you know, sugarcoat it, because we're going to be stuck with the microtransaction system again. And the problem is, it obviously hurts the game in a variety of ways, ranging from customization all the way down to the weapon sandbox. And this leaks over into arena multiplayer as well. And you might be wondering how. Well, Halo's always had a very defined sandbox. For example, in Call of Duty, you have, say, 6 or 7 assault rifle options. In Halo, you have one, really. You have the assault rifle. You have the battle rifle. There aren't 8 different kinds with, you know, minuscule strengths and weaknesses. For the most part, each gun has clear strengths and weaknesses and can be countered and used in specific situations. All this went out the door in Halo 5 for the most part. At launch, it was fine, especially in the campaign, besides for a few, you know, legendary weapon things, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but didn't break the overall sandbox that much until they started adding in everything. Halo 5 felt the need to add in Halo Reach's grenade launcher, or Halo C's Magnum, or Halo 2's BR, and it just shouldn't be like that. I'm playing Halo 5. Halo 5 should use the Halo 5 BR. And in Warzone, this is enough of a problem, but it also leaked into Arena as well, where you'd be running around and there'd be a gunfighter Magnum on the ground, or this map uses the Halo 2 BR instead of the Halo 5 BR. And Halo's always been defined by its weapon sandbox, and it needs to get this sandbox a little better. It needs to focus more on having less weapons, but each weapon having a more defined role, and this is something 343 has failed to nail with, you know, its new Promethean weapons. The scatter shot was basically just a shotgun. The light rifle was just the Promethean equivalent of the BR, or, you know, that precision weapon. They need to get more creative with their weapon design, and it's being hindered by the microtransaction system right now because they need variety of weapons. The problem is, as a whole, the microtransaction system just does not fit within Halo. Halo is a game that's always had 20 or so weapons, max, really. And that's it, and that's really all there should be. And having, you know, tons of different variety and variants is just goes so against what is at the core of Halo's design that it's baffling that it's included. So obviously for Halo Infinite, my hope would be they go back to really having each weapon have one version, one defined mode, one role within the sandbox, and obviously have microtransactions just be abolished as a whole. I mean, loot boxes especially, it's ridiculous. I don't want it in AAA gaming, and you can complain all you want, and they're not going to do anything. But I mean, I can't talk about things I want to see in Halo Infinite and not bring up microtransactions. So as for Warzone, I just have a lot of problems with the mode as a whole. I think I really was mainly an arena player, and that is because I just, from the ground up, I don't like Warzone as a mode. It's 6 maps only. Each one is basically the same as the last, using the same 3 base design. There isn't really a lot of flanking or maneuver options. Everyone about halfway through the game has access to power weapons and power vehicles, and it basically just becomes this, slugfest of grenade launchers, rocket launchers, tanks, snipers, etc., where it just kind of becomes a really big cluster. I personally, just not something I really enjoyed, and I think it had a lot of issues. With that being said, I think there is room in Halo for a larger kind of deviation from big team battle, where you have big team should be the go-to large mode, right? And that wasn't the case in Halo 5. Warzone kind of usurped it there. But I think if you have that, big team battle playlist, and you have like a special weirder mode, asymmetrical, kind of like an invasion, I think the Act Man has talked a lot about what he would do with this, and I like a lot of his ideas. Take those different battles from Halo history. For example, he gave the example of the Pillar of Autumn, and one team is Spartans, and they spawn in and like the armory, right, and you can pick up weapons there, and they'd have obviously a certain number of weapons, but they'd all be there to be picked up in the beginning. And then for the Covenant side, they'd also spawn in, and they'd have a room full of weapons, and a certain set number. So maybe at the spawn, there's, the Covenant get a beam rifle on this map, and the UNSC get a sniper on this map, or whatever, and then have this, 6v6, 8v8, 12v12, whatever it's going to be, kind of battle play out over these, areas that we've seen throughout the Halo campaign, like whether it be New Mombasa, or on the Halo ring, or on the Ark, or just, Reach, a variety of different places you could set these battles throughout, Halo history. And it would be a really cool way kind of just to experience that mode and have a little bit more of a casual yet asymmetrical kind of twist on Halo, without being A, bad, or B, taking away from big team or arena or the major focus of Halo. So that's what I think they should do in terms of microtransactions, Weapon Sandbox, and Warzone. Which brings me to the number 2 thing I want to see in this upcoming game, which is classic Halo. And I know this has been a big debate, for basically as long as Sprint has been added into Halo. Even Halo Reach, this is really where the debate started, this kind of move away from traditional Halo and into kind of this hybrid between Halo and, Call of Duty and the other. And I don't want to say, Halo became Call of Duty, because it didn't. People that say it's a Call of Duty clone, it's not an actual, straight out of Call of Duty, but it did adopt the mindset of a more casual play space, and it did adopt some of the features from that game. And I really think this is not the direction of Halo should be going. I think Halo was definitely at its best in Halo 2 and 3, just in terms of overall quality, map design, Weapon Sandbox, just everything seemed to be focused on building a Halo game as opposed to something to attract the most people. And it's not going to happen. I don't, they're going to put Sprint in this game, I think. Even though, Overwatch didn't have Sprint, and that sold fine. And, Rainbow Six Siege isn't a fast-paced game at all. I mean, yeah, you can sprint, but, who's really using it? Most of the time you're crouched behind a wall or something. And, that's one of the very popular game. I just don't understand why Halo has to change to become something else. And the problem is it's leaving this area on the market where it's like, it's not Call of Duty and it's not Halo, and it's not really satisfying anybody, I feel like. And I know there's people out there that will defend it with, canon, we're super soldiers, we should be able to run, we should be able to do all this weird stuff. And that's fine, you can defend it, and if you really like it, you can. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you you can't. With that being said, I think there's just so much data to show how much better, or at least how much Sprint and especially the Spartan abilities and stuff change Halo. And I guess we can't show it's better per se, but we can show it's very different from the games that, this franchise is. I mean, Halo 2, Halo 3 are really the games, and Halo 1 and Reach to a degree or whatnot, are the games people think of when they think of Halo. But, most of the games people think of Halo are the original trilogy, and it's silly, I think, that they're trying to be something they're not, and going back to the original trilogy formula and still building off of it. You might sit here and say, well, didn't you just say earlier that you don't want it to be Halo CE, that you want it to be its own unique product? And this is where I go, wow, it's almost like we want a game that's part of the franchise we love, that, is respectful and realizes where it's coming from and builds off of what's there and provides a similar experience while still going in new directions, trying new things, and creating its own unique experiences. Wow, it's almost like that's the definition of what people want from a sequel. And that's really where I get mad, is that people just seem to paint us as, we want Halo 3.5. We don't want anything new. And the truth is, I do want something new. I have Halo 3 and Halo 2 and Halo 1, and I love them, and I want another experience like them to add on to this library of really great Halo experiences. And every game since, really, especially 4 and 5, haven't been there. And I think 343 needs to really get in touch with Halo. And it's not just the art style, and that's, everyone seems to be freaking out over the art style in this trailer, saying, oh man, look, it's Chief's armor's back, and it's nice. And obviously I'm not a huge fan of 343's new art style for the most part, and I think it's good that we're probably going back to a more traditional art style. With that being said, it just, that's not the biggest fish to fry, and I don't think just because Chief's armor looks like it did in Halo 2 and 3 doesn't mean that this is going to be a classic Halo or the Halo game we all want. So what's number one? And this might seem like a cop-out to some people, but I'm going to say number one thing I want to see is 343 Industries make the game they want to make. And this might be surprising to some people, and I think this just comes from the idea that a lot of times people forget that the people making these games are artists and people that love making games and want to make stories and experiences and adventures that people are going to remember. And because, at the end of the day, the name on the box is a studio name and not a person like in a book, people forget that there's passionate people that go to work every day that want to create, that want, these experiences to come to life. And as much as I can sit here and say, I want classic Halo back, and I want this, I want that, at the end of the day, it's their game. And as people say, oh no, it's our game, we're the fans, we're the ones that have been here since the beginning, but they're the ones creating, they're the ones that are giving up 3 years of their lives, tough hours to go into work every day and build these experiences. And I honestly, I don't want them to create an experience, necessarily for the fans, and especially not for Microsoft. I want them to go to work and be able to have the freedom to build what they want to build. Because even if it's something I don't like personally, I will at least feel like they were given the opportunity to have their work recognized and have their ideas kind of come to life. And I think it's just an important thing to remember. Don't get too caught up in the what you want, what they want, what Microsoft wants. And it's a shame that, they're getting tugged in all these different directions. This goes for every studio. It's always what does everyone want? And, people are going to work, and these people are storytellers and musicians and artists and designers and 3D designers and all that kind of stuff. And they should really be given the free rein to make their ideas come to life, because that's really what video games is about, to create these worlds and experiences and then allow others to go on that adventure and experience it for themselves. So I'd really like to see 343 just get to make the game they want to make without too much pressure from other people. Well, obviously it's Halo, and so there's going to be some pressure there, but not necessarily too much, oh, sprint, no sprint, And I mean, obviously I'm no sprint, but if 343 honestly wants sprint, I think then as a studio, that's their call. So for Halo Infinite, what are you guys most excited for? What do you guys want to see? I mean, where's your hype level here? I mean, obviously 343 is kind of 0 for 2 at this point as a whole, even if there's elements in both of their games I did enjoy. I don't think they really had that great or even good experience yet. So leave your comments down below, and I will gladly read them. Thanks.